Here's your smart fact of the day. So if I go to Wikipedia and type up the term power dressing, it says born in the second half of the 1970s and developed in the 1980s, power dressing is a fashion style that enables women to establish their authority in a professional and political environment traditionally dominated by men. So, I didn't know that. Power dressing is a response to the domination of men and women responding by looking all powerful. Now, today's episode, welcome to Smarter With Sid, by the way. Today's episode, what we are going to do is deconstruct power dressing, see where it's gone, see what the future holds for us, especially in a post-COVID scenario, and perhaps talk about a personal dressing style or the lack of it. So let's go. In fact, I was seeing some lists, the typical best dressed man or best dressed woman, or then the best dressed business person or the best dressed businessman, businesswoman. So, those typical lists that go around the internet. And I was just saying that clearly there is no project manager or developer that's on the list. Obviously, it's all going to be CEOs and high-powered executives. So I don't think that kind of list should be taken seriously. Although what I did see in those lists is most of them, actually those CEOs of either sex or gender, belong to the lifestyle or the fashion or the branding sort of industry. And just one notable exception, that of Jeff Bezos, who came across as somebody who was wearing something called pajama suits. I don't know, don't even ask me what that is, but he's wearing pajama suits dressed by some fancy schmancy designer CEO, of course, who's also on the list. But Jeff Bezos is on the list as an exception rather than the rule. Clearly, when you're rich and when you're powerful and when you want to make a personal statement and you've got all the designers in the world to do your bidding, whether you're a Tom Ford or whether you're a Jeff Bezos, it is certainly, easy. But what about the average Joe and Jane on the street? How do you look at the concept of power dressing? Now, trust me, I'm no expert in this area. I'm just trying to get smarter with you. Most of my life, I've been struggling with this. I couldn't shave properly every day when I was in the corporate world, nor was I very comfortable with the typical shirt pant thing that used to be de rigueur in the early 2000s or the late 90s when I started working in the corporate world. I slowly gravitated towards the gig economy and very quickly became comfortable with t-shirts and jeans, and I carried that personal look into academia. Although I'm wondering now that my daughters are influencers and I've seen the amount of work that they put in, the professor in me, he's woken up and he's trying to understand the impact of power dressing and it has on people who are, all around us. I guess the examples that you have to take of power dressing would be, Steve Jobs and Barack Obama. And what the interesting thing about both of these examples is, like, both of them wore the same thing every single day to office, or almost the same thing. In Barack Obama's case, he just had one suit for special occasions and one for normal occasions when he was the president. And Steve Jobs was very famously known for his turtleneck sweaters and, jeans and stuff like that. So essentially, you have these iconic people who are wearing fairly standardized uniforms, and there's some beauty to it because you don't have to think too much. There's some cognitive overload that happens when you are the powerful overlord and CEO, and the last thing you want to do is think too much. So that's why maybe you have a Zuckerberg or a Steve Jobs and an Obama deciding to keep it simple. Of course, then you have an Elizabeth Holmes who tries to ape a Steve Jobs without really aping the good stuff. She apes the way he dresses and immediately makes an impact because then she's called the female Steve Jobs. I've seen Elon Musk look rather natty, but he still kind of wears the same kind of suit, doesn't he? All the time, if you see his public appearances. So you have those kind of minimalists, and it's an interesting thing. What I'd love to do is quote two things, right? One is a quote by Warren Buffett, who was asked, why does he wear such cheap suits? And he said, no, the suit isn't cheap. It just looks cheap on me. It was a, sort of a humbling statement coming from the world's richest investor at that time and world's richest man probably at that time, saying that, look, I look shabby. I drink a cherry Coke and whatever. I don't care. I don't care. And it's easy to say that, to be honest. It's easy to say that when you're rich. Paulo Coelho, in one of his books, I think the book is called Like the Flowing River, actually talks about if you go to a cafe and if you see people around you, the people in ties and suits and stuff like that are not the really rich ones. The really rich ones are the ones who don't give a rat's ass about how they're what they're wearing, and they're just slobby and don't care. So that is the kind of look that you could go for if you want to convince people that you're rich and wealthy and powerful. You could do that. But I mean, we need to look at it from a different perspective, right? Whenever you're trying to work, you're trying to belong to a tribe. And in a tribe, you have to both blend in and stand out. And if you're blending in and standing out, I think the best thing you could do is learn from influencers, because they're not celebrities, influencers, especially the micro ones or the not so famous influencers. So I wouldn't count Kim Kardashian in that. But if you just look at influencers and what they're wearing, I think they've got the best of both worlds. So there's something to learn from them, because they are not in the stratosphere, but yet they are making things look okay for us. And that's so important, because most of these lists, as I said, they're talking about CEOs. But if you go to a bank, for example, and if you meet the teller behind the bank, I know it's an old school example, and if you see the teller in a pair of shorts and an earring in his ear, I don't think you're going to trust that bank. Now, this is stereotyping. And this is stereotyping, you might say, and this is something which is not on. But trust me, all the signal that are going from that bank teller to you are screaming that, oh, okay, this person does not respect where he is. This bank doesn't give a rat's ass about how people wear clothes, so maybe they won't care too much about my money. Now, all of this is happening at a subconscious level. All of this is happening at a subconscious level, which is why I think it becomes extremely important for us to understand that the clothes that we wear and the way we carry ourselves, unfortunately, to be honest, unfortunately for me, because I hate thinking about these things, I'm too lazy, to be honest, but do make an impact. Do make an impact. And one of the best ways in which we can counter that impact is by deciding our personal dressing style. Now, it need not be power dressing, and it need not be in response to somebody who's being an asshole, like a dominant person or a dictator or anything of that sort. But what do you want to stand for? Now, you could go the uniform way, the uniform meaning the Barack Obama, Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs way, or you could go the fancy schmancy route, going for, somebody like Tom Ford or whatever. But that's still copying somebody else, isn't it? I have come to realize that the best way for me to think about what I'm wearing for work is to understand that when I'm wearing something to go to work, now in this case, I'm teaching, but you might be doing something else, is to belong to a tribe. It's to stand out, to blend in. And it is not about you at all. It is about the impact that you have, and it's about how people will perceive you. But it is still something that you need to be comfortable with and something that you can do consistently with. Now, this will mean that you require advice from loved ones about what actually works for you, what looks good for you. But the key is not to just buy something expensive or trendy or to not care about it at all. I think it is about maybe thinking about what you're wearing, not as a uniform, but a superhero suit. So when you're looking at a superhero suit, you're not looking at power dressing, you're not looking at uniforms, you're not looking at I don't care what I'm wearing, or you're not looking at anything that's trendy. A superhero suit is what you wear because that's who you should be when you go to work. I just wanted to leave you with this thought as we begin another week of work. And maybe the next time when you think of giving your wardrobe an overhaul, this approach towards making yourself, wear your suit, your superhero suit. Now, your superhero suit might be shorts and a t-shirt for all I care, but it should still be something that you're comfortable with, something that makes you stand out and yet blend in. I hope you liked this episode of Smarter with Sid. Very different from the normal stuff that I do. But I wanted to give you a deeper perspective on something as trivial maybe as wearing clothes to work. And if you like this episode, do like this podcast, subscribe to it. And if you like podcasts like these, well, IVM's got a lot of interesting and wonderful and varied stuff for you. And hey, if you like me, I'm the traveling professor, and I'm right there on Instagram and on LinkedIn. You can, see me there. Until next time.